Hey, what's up, man?
It's a Monday. It's June 7th.
Got caught off guard there a minute.
I know you did. You kind of surprised me. It's June 7th, 2021. Welcome aboard. This is Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode 484.
All right, I'll take that, man.
Inching ever so closely to 500. And we'll have a huge party of two for that podcast. I think it's going to be August. I think that's what someone said, like mid-August for our 500th. But we appreciate you tuning in. Hope you had an awesome...
We should bring them all in and right in the room here. Have
Bring
like
them all? Who's all?
Little fire going and
like your mom and my mom. Like we can. It's
whoever wants to come. Little
we'll
guitar player.
Yeah, we can probably squeeze all 7 of you in to listen. But we hope you had an awesome weekend. It was hot and humid here in Chattanooga, which may or may not be the theme of the podcast today in our topics. But again, I hope you had an awesome weekend. If you were out racing, hope you had a great experience and were able to execute your best and effort. If you're at Blue Ridge 70.3, I was going to say
there was a tough one over there.
I heard it's a little. It was a little tough, and obviously it was made even tougher by the 90-degree temps that they were awarded with, which was kind of like par for the course this time of year. Having said that, Eagleman is traditionally always a super hot and super windy course, but they may get a cold front this week. So you know what? The best thing is to, as we've said on a couple podcasts, prepare to play chess. And if you end up getting checkers, then good for you. But again, hope you had a awesome weekend. If you get out to race, if not, you will be racing soon because racing is back in full swing. If it's your first time checking us out and listening to our podcast, we appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So we appreciate you. And, listen, we talk about it all. We talk about triathlon. We talk about life. We talk about everything in between. We'll do race recaps. We'll do race previews. We'll go into swim, bike, and run in-depth training. We'll have on the occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as best friends, coaches, and athletes ourselves, just going to sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through as athletes and coaches. Sometimes we'll let
humans
and just humans in general and navigating life. But we'll also kind of talk about some of the common themes or threads we find in Training Peaks, kind of talking and going back and forth with feedback through our athletes. And then we'll even hop into our Facebook group, which you can find as search Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right into there. A lot of awesome topics, and it's become quite lively lately with lots of posts and questions. And everyone in there is helpful. It's not like, I know a lot of Facebook groups that are triathlon or race related are full of hysteria, sarcasm, and belittling. But this one isn't, frankly, because they're just made of awesome people. And secondly, because if anybody posts something like that, I have a short cord and I just yank them. But it's generally full of awesome. I have a short leash, man.
The hook, man.
I give them the quick hook. That's not what we're about.
We're worked on vaudeville.
We're about keeping it a positive and community. So hop in there, and a lot of times we'll let them drive the cast and the topic of the day with Q&As. But that's it. We're not experts. We are most certainly not professionals. We just been in the sport for a very, very long time, doing it ourselves, working with other athletes, being coaches, and just kind of working side by side. So that's what we do. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We have one agenda, and that's to hopefully keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I had a good weekend, man.
Did you? You were quiet. I figured you had a good weekend because you were quiet.
Well, yeah, a good training weekend too. But we Friday had David got my hair cut Friday, and then David came in. Well, he came in before that. One of my athletes came in for a hub visit. We had a really good session. He said he's got
came all the way from Texas.
Yeah, all the way from Texas. A few good things he's going to take with him and work on, and he's been working with me for a while. And then we got in a ride Saturday together.
Oh, you and Dave did? Nice.
Yeah, we went out riding at the park, the battlefield, and then went out to dinner Friday and I think Saturday.
State of Confusion both nights?
No, Southside Pizza one night and State of Confusion the other. But yeah, it was just cool because I didn't have a lot going on. He was here, and we just spent some time, and it was really cool. And I guess that's one of the perks of coaching awesome people and
living your lifestyle.
Living the lifestyle and training whenever you can and want to.
And speaking of hub visits, if you're looking to book either a hub visit with Mike or I or any of the other coaches or a swim analysis, do it now. The next few weeks and months are already booking up incredibly fast. You can email c26operations@gmail.com for more info and pricing and just to book in general. But do that now because we're about booked through mid-October. Obviously, we don't do it every day because we have our full-time athletes to work with online and doing the podcast and other things. But the spots that we do have open, I'd say like 90% of them are full. So do that. And if you want to kind of have more info or just have a visual of what goes into a hub visit or some of the reviews or just some video of the swim analysis, we're doing a lot. You can also follow us for some lively and entertaining updates on Instagram. C26_triathlon is a great way to check that out and kind of get a feel for what's going on with our community. Not just what we're doing here for the hub, but with all of our coaches. We do athlete highlights each week. We have an athlete of the week, and then it's generally kind of entertaining. It's just generally pretty awesome from what I understand. My mom told me. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not in charge of our Instagram. But my mom, it was like one of the first things she said. She goes, "Robbie, your Instagram is great." And so we were eating lunch at like this on Saturday. I took Hayden to Nashville to see my mom. She's got like a foot problem again, and I haven't seen my grandmother in a while. And so we met at like this typical old lady place called The Picnic. I mean, it's like it's the decor is like typical of what you would imagine a place. Like there's antiques and china on the walls and very
nervous
a whole lot of chicken salad and pimento cheese, spread like just a very typical old person place. And we're sitting outside and it's my grandmother, my aunt, my mom, and obviously Hayden and I. And Mom goes, "Khaki, like, do you follow Robbie on Instagram? Like his business?" I was like, so of course, and it took me at like, I don't know, the remainder of lunch just to find, because she's like in her 60s, like to find where it was on Instagram. Because she doesn't listen to this podcast. I don't think my mom has listened in a while, but I was watching her search, right? And it's not like, listen, I'm not the guy that should be telling you how to do things on social media, but my mom goes, you should really search for C26 Triathlon. So she pulled up Instagram, and in like the little search box, she typed in search C26, and I was like dying laughing inside. I was like, "Khaki, backspace a little bit, and just put C26 in there. It might be, you're probably not going to find search C26 under search C26. But it's an awesome place to check out. Obviously, you can also go to our website, C26triathlon.com. It is definitely our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community.
You got me intrigued about the picnic. Search picnic.
We can
on Instagram.
Listen, maybe I'll take you there. We've got our June camp going to Nashville in a few weeks. And we usually have like our standard places, right? Like we hit up Le Peep, for our post Boost Fit Swim Club our breakfast. We've got our coffee shop that we usually go to, and we always have the our regular spot out there in Bellevue that we go to post. Maybe we'll hit up they can't handle. I'm just saying they can't handle the picnic, and they'll continue to survive until their client base dies off.
All right, so Emily sent me a video last night, a Michael Phelps video. I just wanted to throw this out.
Michael Phelps video? Okay.
Yeah, it was one of his, like, how he was disappointed in his first big deal, and then how he turned it around and whatever. And then he said he made the commitment to swim every single day and, lift and everything else he was doing too. But he said one of the things he said in the video was he wanted to swim every day because he feels like every day you miss swimming, you lose 2 days of feel for the water. I thought that was an interesting concept. I mean, at that level, I'm sure, but there's certainly something about that.
At that level, sure. And I have that feeling as well. Like sometimes, and even athletes will say this, if you go on vacation, your swim back, because it's so technique driven, and it's about being in a good rhythm. And I think if you've never had a quote unquote feel for the water, then it's hard for you to wrap your brain around, because it's not something I don't think you can readily describe to someone about having a good feel for the water is. I consider it more like, proprioception, just having a good enough catch and a good enough pull to kind of feel the water on your hands and on your forearm. But it is 100% true. I don't know if, obviously for the average Joe, like you can't swim every single day. It's not like losing 2 days, but at that high of a level, then obviously, it's going to be, it's probably going to make a huge difference because you have that much of a heightened sense of what the feel for the water should be like because you're at the elite level. And I say this too with athletes and pretty much everything. And obviously we're age groupers. We do this as a hobby. He is he was a professional, and even talking like, even you look at like the professional triathletes or cyclists, it's like they train more in basically each discipline than they don't. Right. So like you can't expect to, like, if you look over the course of a week, you can't expect to get significantly better in swimming if you swim less days than you don't. Right. So you have to swim at least 3, or if you can, swim 4 days a week, which is obviously the hardest thing for most athletes to be able to accomplish, because it takes the most time, right? Unless you have like an endless pool, or unless you're like 3 minutes away from the gym that you go to. It's just like four swims a week for most people. And they say they swim an hour. It's not 4 hours, right? It's like 6.5, 7 hours, because you got to commute, you got to get in the lane. So for them, it's just really, really time consuming. The same thing goes for running, right? Oh, I just run twice a week and I can't understand how I'm not getting any better. Or same thing with cycling. But yeah, I think it always takes me at least 2 or 3 weeks to get like a good feel for the water back. But last week was the first week that I've swam 3 times since 2018. And even though my arms were wasted come Friday when I did my swim, I felt better than I had the 2 days beforehand, just because you had that feel for the water. My stroke was back, because I always consider swimming as a lot like dancing. It's a lot like rhythm. You got to have a good rhythm to be a good swimmer, in my opinion. So you put all these things together and you have a good feel for it, and it just clicks. So, at his level, again, like, I don't know if I can see him being every day, but I also think that, if we're being honest, like, he obviously is, in recovery too. He has a kind of an addictive personality. So like, I'm sure that in that perfection type mentality of like, it's not good enough, I have to be better, more is always the answer. I would have to imagine some of that probably plays into it as well.
Yeah. And I agree. I just wanted to bring it up because I think that feel for the water question is something that most triathletes have no idea.
Zero. Like, and
I've had it, sometimes I get it, but like, you can tell it's hard to explain though. It's probably like doing an acid trip or something. From what I understand,
it's like going back to your Woodstock days.
They say it's like, it's unbelievable, but you can't explain it. So it's not worth talking about.
Cool. Good talk. Yeah. I'm glad they, didn't think they could describe that. The reason, and I use this kind of analogy in almost every single swim analysis that we do, the main reason that most athletes in order to have like a really, really good feel for the water, you have to feel the water and the pressure of the water against your forearm and your hand. Like, you have to be able to, like, the greatest athletes in the world can feel the water with their hands. They take in a stroke and they're able to like turn their hand around and cup it. They can feel that still water against their hand and then grab it and push it backwards. What most athletes do, and again, I say this in almost, I would say probably 7 out of 10 swim analysis I do, and especially here the last 2 or 3 weeks, is that I would argue 70 to 80% of all triathletes move their water in a circle. They push their water down, which isn't doing you any good. Okay, it's maybe raising you up a little bit, which is a small benefit, because again, swimming is all about as much water as you can push behind you with as little of you in the water as possible. It's like swimming is not like cycling. It's not aerodynamics, it's hydrodynamics. So, but what most athletes do is they push. If you think about like the 360 degrees that you get 180 degrees on top of the water, and then you get 180 degrees below the water. As soon as their hand hits the surface, most athletes spend from, let's look at it from like 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 3 to 9, right? Is the hands on the clock from, where you have your hand under the water. Most athletes from like, once they hit the water from 3 to like 5 are just pushing water down. And then they may push water back. If you continue, follow me like in your head with like following the dial on the clock, is like they might get some pushing of water backwards from like maybe 5 to 7 if they're lucky. And then from 7 to 9, they're just pushing water up. They literally move water in a circle. And I've used a description of like those I think they're called like wheel wells, like that pick up water out, on the side of a well, and they go and they pick up water. They'll bring it all the way up and all the way around, all the way up and all the way around in a circle. That's what most triathletes do. They don't have an early vertical form. They're not able to get any catch or get any kind of feel for the water. So they just push water down and they push water up while they're kicking frantically, and they're also trying to figure out why they're in so much of a hurry and they're not going anywhere, which is another, like, I talk about cadence in cycling, and you see a lot of athletes like that are spinning their wheels so fast to go, because they think moving their arms quickly means going faster. and they're just working harder to go nowhere, which is like this. And again, go back to cycling analogy. It's like watching, a guy who's got his very first bike and he's cruising along in the flats. And we all know this person we've ridden before, and they're doing like 120 cadence, just trying to like keep up with you, right? The flats, and he's putting out like, an 8 or 10 on an effort level, and it's barely going anywhere. And you're like, dude, just downshift, like put it in like a happy, put it in your happy place. And then he downshifts in, a better and harder gear into like 80. And he's like, oh, this is easier and I'm going faster. That is swimming. Again, going back to like the pushing water down and pushing water up into a circle, that is how most athletes, triathletes, especially if they came to the sport later on in life and haven't had a lot of good technical work done, end up looking like in the water. They're just pushing water down, pushing water up, and it's hard to get a feel for the water that way if you're not pushing it back.
Yeah, because it was actually a few days ago. I always once in a while I'll check out that 1500 world record by what's that guy's name, Soon or whatever.
Yeah, doper, Sun Yang.
But they're
giant doper.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, they're probably. I mean, aside from that, like you watch everybody in there, like I'm just always floored by their vertical, their elbow in the water is like right at the top of the water, man. They're just like pulling that. They get that really good reach, and then they're instantly vertical forearm, and they just straight back, and it's like just
he has I
watch
think
that.
He has probably the best. It also comes down to like dexterity and like
I was going to say flexibility.
Yeah,
man.
like it's not something that you can't just like, oh, I can do that. Like I can move my arm that way. It's because it's like people who can like have, who can like disjoint their thumbs or they're double jointed. Like they just have that. He's not double jointed, or Ledecky as well. Like, she gets so vertical so quick. And that's another thing. Like when you look at your arms and you're trying to explain to someone, like looking at your hand as a lever, your forearm as a lever, and your upper arm as a lever, like the first thing you should do in the water is basically like once you enter is keep your elbow as high as you can to the surface of water, and then basically pop it so you can get your forearm to go and get that early vertical forearm. But most people like just struggle with that concept. But they're just like, I don't know, I could probably just roll with this and talk for the next 45 minutes and make like how to not suck at swimming, like number 8. But
well, I'm sorry to bring up swimming. I know you don't like talking about it.
Yeah, it's my least favorite thing to do in the world. But it is very, very hard for people to wrap their brain. But once they get it, it sticks. And I think one of the reasons people kind of actually shy away from early vertical form, and honestly, generally speaking, just a whole lot of things in swimming, is because we are wired as humans to like always think, oh, well, I need to take the path of least resistance and it should feel easy, right? Like there's a lot of these entry-level swim programs that are really, really great at just getting people comfortable at being in the water. And I think they do an outstanding job of that, because in order to get better, you have to be comfortable, right, with doing anything. So like products and things like total immersion, I think they're great for like for adult onset swimmers who are generally just uncomfortable, they have no idea what to do. It's fine to get them comfortable again, because you have to want to go swim to get better, so you can swim and get better. But what happens is they just tend to move so epically slowly. Their arms are incapable of moving fast. They are thinking about kind of gliding and being soft and careful with the water. Like for the athletes that we work with and who get in the pool, like when the swim session is done, I want to have all the plexiglass up. I want all of it. Like we have 5 sheets of plexiglass we put around our pool. And usually what happens is the faster you're going, the more forceful you're being, the more water you're pushing backwards, the more plexiglass we use. So like we should have like a 1 through 5 level of like how great your swimming is. You're a 1 plexiglass person, it probably means you're pretty slow, you're pretty soft. But most athletes don't like, or the feel a lot of times of getting an early vertical form or grabbing water out wide is because the water is still. It's harder pressure against your forearm, it's harder pressure against your hand. It's just harder. And athletes are like, oh, I want to just drag your hand underneath your body. But again, you're not pushing it still water. You're not going to get the same propulsion forward. But we just like the path of least resistance. And then their arms fatigue quicker, obviously because they have more resistance of pressure against their forearms and their upper arms. So they won't want to do it as much. They tire like, oh, well, I can't tire that easy, or I won't be able to swim, right? But it's all about exposure. We don't think that way with cycling, right? We don't think that way with running. Most people only think that way for whatever reason in swimming. If it's too hard, I can't sustain this. You don't have that mindset on the bike. You're like, oh, intervals given to me. Like people crave mile repeats or 400s or 800s that you're not going to run that right? You're not going to run that speed for a full marathon or Ironman. Like, you're not, because you're going to tire out, but you're not like, I can't do this. My technique is going to do this, and my technique's going to fail. I need to take this really easy and calm. Cycling, same way. Give me intervals. Give me things to do. Like, I want to be able to smash it, but you can't sustain that for a 70.3 floor for a lot of people, even Olympic. Yet, you still do them. Hop in the water. Let's just work on some things for your swimming. Nah, I got to be able to just get through it. But the reason for that is because swimming is different because you're submerged in water. You can't just coast. You're always breathing. It's the breathing of it. But and what I've tried to explain for the last few athletes that have come through, because one of the most common issues I see with athletes in the pool that get in so much of a hurry is that they get that hypoxic, or I think a lot of athletes have had this like hypoxic feeling when they're swimming, especially in open water, is because they aren't getting enough inhale and enough exhale, right? And so because their face is in the water and they're either so amped up or they're so anxious, they're just they're breathing in and out of a paper bag, right? Well, what I think a lot of athletes fail to recognize is that the weaker your pull is, okay? The weaker it is, the less you do with it. That also equates to the less time it's in the water. The less time your arm is in the water also gives you less time for your face to be out of it, less time to take a huge breath, right? Or a big exhale from the other side that you're not breathing on. The longer, and I'm not talking about slow, but just the longer and stronger your stroke is, your face is going to have more time to be out of the water while getting a bigger stroke, while not moving your arms frantically, than it will be if you're just churning and burning through like a gerbil on or a hamster on a hamster wheel going a million miles an hour. You're never going to get a full breath. You're never going to be going anywhere fast. Oh, but you know what you should do, Johnny? You should kick, because kicking's going to stabilize everything in your body. Sure. Let me just take my quads and my hamstrings and my calves that are 10 times larger than any of the muscles I'm going to use for swimming. They're going to demand and ask for all this blood and all this oxygen. While I know I don't have an efficient kick, I'm going to kick from these. It's probably going to slow me down. I just can't figure out why I'm not going any faster.
Yeah.
You mean let you have a couple words here before I start going at it again?
Well, no, because that's the other thing. I was in that 1500. That the kicking is so minimal with those guys.
Minimal. Like it's like I'm not advocating.
It's very artistic, I have to say.
It is,
because like it's beautifully like crafted.
It's well timed, right? And that's why like a 2-beat kick is like what I would recommend athletes learning, because it's just enough, right, to keep your legs engaged. Because I don't advocate zero kicking, because it's basically impossible, right? I advocate very minimal but strategic kicking, which is filling in gaps, right? Which is, for a lot of athletes, like if you watch Ledecky in like the 800 or 1500 when she goes on, like maybe a person who's not familiar with swimming, it looks erratic because you're like, where is this? Why is it? It's not like a typical flutter kick. It's not a 6-speed or 8-beat. You're like, why is she doing it like this? But it's to fill a gap, but also to help her get up and over for her big gallop stroke. It's either fill a gap or help them keep some kind of a balance. And I think that's the biggest thing that athletes fail to understand is, well, you need to, rotate your hips side to side, and you need to, kick really, really. It's not so much for most athletes. It's not about propulsion, because it's not even about mostly propulsion for Olympic athletes. It's about balance in the water. And most athletes are so wiggly. Like, your hips are the most underrated body part when it comes to swimming. Like you've heard me say this before when we do a swim analysis, like, to me, your hips are your steering wheel, right? The more stable your hips are, in my opinion, the longer, the stronger, the steadier, and the straighter you're going to swim. What you see with most athletes, I've been taught to really, rotate my, so if you look at it, like, put your hands at 3 and 9 on the steering wheel to move them back and forth. If that's your hips, why are you rotating so much? What is it actually accomplishing? Like if someone tells you, why am I rotating so much in my hips? What's the benefit I'm getting from it? And then see what their answer is, because I would love to hear what over rotating your hips side to side is actually doing for you. If you want a hip drive, go for it. Drive up and over a barrel to get you up and over your early. But twisting side to side, what happens is your steering wheel, as you're moving back and forth, is going to make you go right. It's going to make you go left. It's very rarely ever going to make you go forward. But what's also attached to your hips? Your legs. Most athletes that I see, like just last week, nothing. I said, stop kicking. Just stop, because it is literally slowing you down. Like, you're kicking from your knee, it's herky-jerky, and all they did was stop kicking and got like 13 seconds per 100 faster because A, it was wasting so much oxygen, but B, it was literally making them slower. And they were just so wiggly. They were doing so much, like all things in life, it's about return on investment. So the more work you do left to right, east to west, the less you're doing north and south, forward and back, which is what you should be doing when you're swimming. It should be very simple, swimming in a rectangle.
Mm. Yeah, and last week we talked about it. I came in and I said, man, my swimming feels pretty good, but I got to get, mentally off this pull buoy. And you're like, put a band around your ankles. Like it's not new information, but sometimes when it comes back through. So I put it, and I started doing it in the endless pool, and it took me, like 4 or 5 or 6 times to actually feel what I should be doing. And that's kind of how I do a lot of things, is like just sort of like play around with them. And then I'm like, oh, you know what happened? It was the hips, like you're saying. I connected to my hip bones, and which is all about that core activation through that lower core and everything. And then it just started making sense. So I'm like, oh, and I kept working at it, and you were like, just do that, and then that's a good way to get off the pull buoy without just going completely cold turkey. And you can get the band and wrap it around your ankles, and then you really have to force yourself to think about and activate that core, which then becomes hopefully, subconscious, and then you start, just doing it normally, even with the pull buoy, because that's what happens, right? Is like, you can start doing it like that, and then all of a sudden it's like, I got that thing back there. I'm just going to let it sink.
Yeah, the purpose isn't to be lazy, right? Like people think like, that tools in swimming are lazy, but in no other sport do you hear athletes be like, oh, well, you're not allowed to use a heavier bat, right? To work on anything. You're not allowed to use, a different kind of club or do drills and technique. That's just lazy, right? It's about technique, right? Basketball is, in my opinion, a very technical sport when you talk about, having, creating a good shot. Same thing with golf. Like, it's not like we all have tools to get better, especially when it's something that's so technical like swimming is. But when you put a buoy, it's to allow you to swim up to a point. It's to allow you to swim more, to get more fitness so you can hold your form longer. It's not about being lazy. If you find yourself being lazy in the pool and not obviously focusing on swimming long, lengthening your body out to swim. So lengthening your body out, really thinking about not engaging your core. Because when I think about engaging my core, I think about doing a crunch, right? I don't want to do a crunch when I swim. I want to think about elongating my torso and my legs and keeping them high in the water. Is to grab your buoy and then also put a band around your ankles. Because if you do that, then you really do have to focus on, again, not tightening your core, but lengthening and straightening and keeping like firm, like you're doing a plank, right? Which is obviously like you're tightening your core, but in a much different way than like doing a crunch. But I'm a huge advocate of putting the band around the ankles for pool, especially for, swimmers that are just getting comfortable in like the 145 to 205 range, because it'll continue to help you work on your stroke and your form and getting strong enough, but it will also require you to make sure you're at least being aware and present to keep your core engaged, right? And to keep you being long and lengthened and not obviously doing like those, because a lot of people that boo into their legs and they still cheat, they still kick a little bit, or they just get slouchy, right? And the purpose isn't to be slouchy. The purpose is to be aware of your body and the proprioception that you need to just have overall good body awareness, which is so crucial. Because that is like the other part when people talk about having a feel for the water. It's just about having good proprioception, like where your body is in space. And swimming makes it harder because you're thrown into a body of water, right? Because when you get people in the pool, you're like, so I want you to swim really, really wide and bring your arms out because you're crossing over. They'll do it for a minute or two, and then they come back and they're like, how was it? I'm like, I think I did great. And you're like, you didn't even move. Because it's just so hard to that's what you kind of have to aim where you think you're going to aim, or tell people to go wider than they really, or to think wider than you really want them to go so they can actually get there. But that's why swimming is so hard and people give up so quickly on it and get so frustrated and get so discouraged, is because it can be made to be so technical, even though it's not. It can be simplified and made easier. It's just you have to find 1 or 2 things to work on and get it right. You can't do 4 different drills in a workout and be like, what the am I doing? Like, are you getting any better? Or are you just like doing a few, like things need to stick, right? Things need to stick to get better. It's the same thing with like when people have way too much variety in training. You don't need that variety to get better. And a lot of times it's an impediment to success because you can't measure anything and you can't pace anything or execute things the way you want to. You just like it. And that's the same thing with swimming. Like I'm going to do, 2,000 of drills and, like, then what? What's it going to work on? You can't do 5 minutes of something once a week and expect to fix it, right? You have to implement certain things in your workouts to focus on and do it repetitively and then put it all together. You can't just sprinkle a little bit of snorkel here and a little bit of band here and a little bit of buoy here. You have to concrete it, fix it, move on to the next, because that's what most swimmers do. Is like they see technique, and they think, well, gosh, I've got 4 or 5 things I need to work on. That's a lot of things to work on. So let me kind of work on, right? Which is what I see like people's mesh bag. It's their kind of bag. I'm gonna kind of work on my kick and with my snorkel and my paddles and my buoy and my everything else. I'm gonna kind of work on all these things, but I'm never gonna get any better at them because I'm not gonna do them long enough to make any of them stick. Because I keep 200 kick, working on my kick, and then you stop and you go to your paddles. What are you working on, right? Do you make up your mind? Like, are you working on your stroke, or pick it and then work? But that's what most athletes do, is they want to be kind of okay at a lot of things. They never get good at any of them, and they quit. And they're like, you know what? I'm not getting any better at swimming. I'm just going to just swim slow and easy. I'm going to get in the water. I'm going to swim my 2,000 straight and think that's going to cut it. And then on race day, I'm going to wonder why I can't put it all together.
Mm. Yeah, it's like the guy that has the workshop with every tool in the book, but he's got like 25,000 unfinished projects.
Exactly, right?
It's like, I can do anything, but I never really finished anything. One of the things I think about with swimming with me is like, I've been, anterior pelvic tilt. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
You can't be dropping like huge words on me like this.
I'm going big time here.
Yeah.
But it's basically it's a posture thing, right? So when you stand, some people have that lower back curve, where their butt sort of sticks out. And the point is to get that posture more straight up. And I think there's a few things that lead to that. Sitting at a desk all day probably makes it's basically like you're hunched over and your lower back becomes weaker because you're not, you're in that position a lot. And I sleep on my stomach a lot. So I think a lot of times it's just a gravity thing over time.
People who sleep on their stomachs are champions.
Yeah, I think I'm
a stomach sleeper.
But I'm just saying, you got to kind of, you got to counteract it a little bit. So I've been working on trying to get that posture, that more of that straighter spine up there. Because my point is, I think in the water, if your belly is kind of sinking down, and you know what I mean, you have that arch in your back, I think that makes it harder to stay up.
The rest just sinks. That's why you see people's legs just trailing behind them. You can have the greatest stroke on the planet, but if you're swimming with an anchor tied to your legs, right, and you see your butt is that's why the thing, like one of the best compliments you can get from me in those pools, like, hey, I can see your butt cheeks, because that's how high you are in the water. Because if I can see your butt, your legs are high. It's not like, oh, well, you're going to swim in like the shape of an L, right? It's not like you're going to see your butt up high in the water, then like your legs are going to just droop down straight. But most people, again, like they can't think about lengthening out your core to keep the rest of your body high in the water. It's not about just crunching in your belly button. It's about lengthening it out the same way. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, stomach sleepers are champions. I mean, I feel like that's, if you're a side sleeper, that's right. If you're a back sleeper, you're a serial killer. That's basically what.
I don't know how people can sleep on their back.
I don't either.
Nightmares, man.
It's just insane to me.
But I think.
Do you sleep with a pillow between your legs?
I've done it sometimes. Yeah,
I just thought so.
But I can't really do it. I'm pretty much all on with the stomach.
I'm straight stomach sleeper,
but
and I don't even use a pillow.
You got it. The arms become the problem. Then you sleep on your arm, right?
No, I don't even use a pillow. Like I have one for, I think it's more like decorative, just to kind of have. But I basically like move my head so far down the pillow where it's like barely resting above my head. And then I put one hand above my head and the other one just down to my side.
Yeah, I mean, my pillows are usually just flat.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a towel almost. But the problem is when I had that shoulder thing, I was really having problems. So I was trying to sleep on my side more, and I was doing the pillow, all that crap, and it just doesn't work. But the point being, is
I'll get back on track here.
I think it's just that the lower back work strength and the core work because I think it applies to running and cycling too. Because like if you're running and you kind of have that, you naturally, your gut is kind of popping out. You have that sort of arch in your back. You want to be straight up and down with a little bit of a lean. And I can tell when I'm running, and it's the similar thing, I guess. You sort of like concentrate on having a strong core while you're running. Your form is going to be stronger and better over longer distances. But if you get lazy, and that's when you see people start to, like drag their feet and everything like that. So I think it all plays in, and I think it really has an effect on swimming a lot of times when people have that hard time keeping their legs up, or keeping that body position.
That's why, though, it's so hard, right? Because you're asking, and that's why we're such an advocate of like, let's work on your stroke technique first, right? Because if you think like all the things we just said, we're just referencing like things from the belly button down, right? Which is hard enough to kind of get a feel for. We're not even talking about like, the thing that propels you through the water, which is the best stroke, right? Because that is why swimming is so hard for people to wrap their brain around as they come to it later on in life, is because going back to like the person who has like a million things kind of done, but nothing finished, is like, you want to finish stroke. And if you can do even, and we tell athletes in this pool too, is like, I'll take one great stroke and one okay stroke versus two kind of okay strokes. Like if you have a person who has like a really, really strong side and they're just like, they do it perfectly and do it well, then you fix that stroke to where they can just get that. If you watch Ledecky, which is a whole different animal, because she's, in my opinion, like the best swimmer on the planet, like male or female, is if her gallop stroke is very much like that. Her big, huge right arm stroke, her left arm mostly serves as just kind of a pass-through to get back to the right stroke. Get back to the right. Like, give me back to the good stroke, right? Like, give me back to something that I can do really, really, really quickly and do really, really well. And I just think it's okay to think about swimming in a much simpler way, in terms of like, I just need to figure out how to do two things really well. And we'll tell people down in this pool, and I think if you're like a self-coached, find two things, right? Not the two things that you hear or that you read or that you think and want to make sense, but find the two that make sense to you and you feel like you can practically address. Because if you're standing there and you're giving somebody instruction and technique, and I say, hey, I want you to do this, and they're like, that just doesn't make sense to me. We're not going to spend the next hour trying to make it make sense if the next thing on the list, I'm like, oh, I totally get that. I can do that. Like, that makes sense to me, because swimming, again, is like such a, an aha type sport, that stop drilling it in things you just don't understand or don't get, and start at least applying the things that you do get, and you do get, that you feel like you can do those first, because then you're just chipping away, at the links that are dragging you down, and that's going to make the next thing you do easier, right? Because your stroke is better, you're faster, you're more efficient. Stop beating a dead horse by just thinking, well, I've got to get this one piece, instead of ignoring all the other things. You don't do that in running and cycling. You just do what you can do and that makes sense to you, and then you get better.
Yeah, I mean, every time I'm with somebody in the endless pool, that's kind of the motto, is like, that's the tendency, is like there could be 100 things, to work on. And it's like, I always, especially if somebody comes in and they're pretty decent, I'm like, all right, there's two things here to work on that will make a difference within kind of the context of what you got going right there. With David on Friday, it was sort of like, he's a pretty solid swimmer. So we were just talking about his crossover, and then his elbow was like, he was digging, which I do all the time too. I think a lot of people do this, where their arm goes in and they go straight down, and then the shoulder goes under the water. And I think that's a lot of it is swim fitness too, because it's just easier to kind of put your whole arm under there and then like pull with your whole arm, even though it's harder, if that makes sense. It feels like you're working harder. And so we just talk about staying out wide and keeping that elbow a little higher, and just working on getting it higher and higher instead of crossing over. And those are the little things that take. Oh, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. But that probably takes you a month to really work at, to really lock that in. That's the thing, is like, you can think about it and understand it, but if you can't physically pull that together,
doesn't matter.
You don't go from 0 to 100 in that change. You kind of go up the ladder and make little adjustments till you get higher and higher and higher. Just concentrate on it, and then one day, you'll have it.
It's the same.
Supposedly.
It's such a great analogy to like why you see like the best athletes on the planet rarely make the best coaches, because they just get it. Like, you don't need to explain to them; they just got it, right? Most of the best athletes or the best coach on the planet either weren't that very good, right, or had to work their tail off, right, to get better, or they ended up, or a lot of them they just didn't. They played high school football. They love coaching. They just know how to figure it out, and they know how to teach it. They know how to express it. They know how to say things in a way so people can consume them and apply them. You can talk to someone that has all the knowledge and all the intelligence in the world that can, but if you can't understand what they're saying, or they can't get it out of their mouth in a way that allows you to consume it and apply it and hear it in a way that makes sense to you, then all the information is useless, right? Like I could probably talk to Warren Buffett for like 30 minutes. And if he was talking at like a really, really high level of like, his, of how to invest and how to do things with finance and money, like, you know how much I take from it? Nothing. Just that he's smarter than me. But if I talk to somebody who's like more on my level that explains to me in a way that like makes sense. And, if he's talking like, well, once you get to $1 billion, you need to do this. I'm like, I can't think on that level. Like that's never going to happen. But if you ask somebody like, yeah, like if you get, X amount, I'm like, oh, you're more engaged. That's how coaching is, right? It doesn't matter how fast a coach is or how, accomplished they are. If they can't teach you and they can't resonate and things they say or communicate don't resonate with you, then it's meaningless. And that is so much what swimming is. It's a hard enough conversation to have individually. Like still to this day, as an athlete and a person who swam year round growing up, there are still things I'm figuring out. Like, that's what I need to do, or that makes sense. That's how I can work on it. That's what's going to help me focus on this, because it's endless, right? Everything else we do is endless in our lives, and swimming is no different, cycling and running, but people just approach swimming so differently. I don't think I'll ever understand why, because if you think about it, it may be the shortest, but it is the hardest to get right. Yet we use the excuse of, well, it's the shortest one of the three. It doesn't really matter. It is the hardest. Go pick 3 random strangers off the street and be like, I'm going to teach you how to run. Okay, I already know how to do that. I'm good. Or I'm going to teach you how to ride a bike. I got that too. Let me teach you how to swim. Okay, well, good luck with that, because I've never swum in my life. Yet, most triathletes and like, I don't need to worry about it. Not that big of a deal, because the other 2 are so much easier from a technical aspect to do. You just can go do it. You can go ride. You can go run. But when it comes to swimming, people just disregard.
Well, they're always that's always the one they're most afraid of.
Exactly.
That's what's like,
and the one they ignore the most.
It's like, yeah, working on it doesn't matter until you're hanging on the side of a kayak,
right?
Going, man, I'm
terrified.
Terrified. Where and then be pre-race, it's always that high anxiety thing. Once I get out of the water, I'm going to be fine. It was like, why
once and if like, you get out of the water without
I go back. We were talking about
get it
a few weeks ago. As like, I keep thinking, I was like, my run is important, and obviously it's a huge, maybe the hugest part of having a fast race. But if you can't get to it able to run, and we just so underestimate that effort that goes into a swim sometimes. Like coming out like last time I did it at Wisconsin, man, I had to really suck it up when I got done with that, because it cashed me, and I thought I was in good shape for it. I just didn't hit it right, and my whole rhythm, everything was off about that swim, and it was a big time struggle. And to underestimate the effort and the energy you put into something like that, and think you're going to go crush the rest of a 100-mile ride in a marathon. I mean, you got to get to the point. I mean, like, but you're right. How do you convince people that you need to be like, just, train your swim to be that Cadillac engine where you don't even have to really turn it up in the water. You just
but that's going to take so much. That's why we do this, to work hard at getting better. Like, you're okay, right? Smashing yourself on Trainer Road at 110% of FTP for 40 minutes a week, right? You're okay to use that at getting better, but you're not okay at attacking the pool the same way to get better. It's you see it all. You're willing to go out and do 2-hour runs in the heat and the humidity of the summertime, right? That's going to absolutely wipe you out. But when someone asks you to go to the pool and swim for 40, 50 minutes, you're like, I'm not going to get any better. What the hell? Like, does that make any sense to you? But I love to put me in the bike, coach. Let me smash it. Swim in the pool for like 3,500. They're like, why is our swim so long? Like, I don't have an IM for like 4 weeks. Why is my swim so long? Like, get your ass in the pool, dude, and swim. Like, you have, like, none of your Trainer Road Smash Fest workouts are going to do anything, or your mile repeats are going to matter if you, A, can't get out of the water, or you get out in 20 minutes longer than you're anticipating using higher effort, or you get out at the same time, but instead of swimming in zone 2, like you probably should for a lot of races, you're swimming in zone 5. And then you wonder why the watts don't add up on your race day and you can't push the same. I just can't push. Look at your swim, dude. Like it's a cascade effect. The same analogy, while it doesn't go with winning, it goes with winning your day. Professionals say the same thing. The swim might not win you the race, but it will 100% lose you the race. Why don't age groupers have the same mentality? It might not win you the race, but it will lose you your race. It might not lose you the overall win or the age group win, even though it could, but it can lose you your race. So if you start to take it a little more seriously, or just in general have some, but that's the other thing is that like you'll see, it's hard to get better at swimming because most of the instruction types that you see that get workouts, you're like, I just spent 1,500 meters doing, 500 catch-up girl, 200 kick, 200 snorkel, 200 paddle, 100 yards swim on my side, another 100 yards swim on my side. Oh, look, I got a sub today for master swim. I got to get out of the water and do 10 push-ups and jump back in. Like that has anything to do with swimming better. I'm sorry, it's busy work and it's for entertainment. It's not to get you better. And then you wonder why you can't get any faster. It's like, get in and get to work. Because if you're complaining to me that you don't have enough, I'm ready to go, guys. If you complain to me that you don't have enough time to swim and it's too time intensive, then stop messing around when you get in the water and get to work. Do a 200 warm up. Well, doesn't it take me longer to get warmed up? And get in the water and get to work. 200 warm up, get in the meet, 200 cool down, bye. Don't spend 1,500 yards, 2,000 yards getting quote unquote warm. You got to go. Plus, at the rate most pools are going right now, you can't even book a lane for longer than 45 minutes. So what are you going to do now? Like you've seen so many athletes go, what do I do for 45 minutes? You bust your ass to get better for 45 minutes. You don't waste the first 25 laying on your side, kicking up and down. Because if you give most athletes a kickboard and ask them to do a 400, it's going to take them 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Got anything else? Bring it.
Yeah.
Freaking swim pinata today.
For me, man.
Oh
man, I had something there, but I lost it.
Can someone explain to me why we're obsessed with like dragging our elbows out of the water?
See how I do that? I just
you do. You have like the silent stab. You're like, I'm just gonna let him walk right into this one by just not doing anything. That's the other thing that drives me up the wall when you get. And if you're a coach or on a deck, please explain to your swimmers why we do something, because so many times we'll get people in this pool or they come in for our camps and I'm like, tell me why you should have a high elbow out of the water. I don't know. Like, then why are you doing it? Like, ask questions like, why do you feel like you need to do these things? Because most athletes who are obsessed with having a high elbow, like have zero finish in the back end of the stroke. They're just basically pushing water up or they're dragging it. Once you get your hand in the water, your form in the water, do the work, because your arm doesn't propel you faster when it's in air. Okay, it doesn't do anything. So leave in the water longer to push more water back. But not everyone, a lot of people are so obsessed with having their arm so like their elbow perfectly out of the water, but drag my elbow up the side of my body.
I was just thinking,
how slowly are you moving right now to be able to do that? Like,
is the reason that they do that is just to kind of create that position all the time to get your arm used to that? I don't know. I'm just throwing things out here.
I don't get it.
But I don't know. Could be. You think about all these drills and everything like that. And what was the Johnny Weissmuller? Wasn't he like a world class swimmer?
Sure, Wiseman. I don't know.
Tarzan, that guy.
Oh, he's a world class swimmer. He was pretty solid in his day.
I think he was, but he swam with his head out of the water.
Yeah, and he could swim pretty fast. The old lady spring break swim.
World record. But anyway, the point being is like the dude was just a powerful swimmer, and he probably got a tremendous catch, and he had an awesome feel for the water. And the more we talk about this sport, it's like, you can technique yourself into the grave, like trying to figure this stuff out. But basically it comes down to understanding how to get a good feel for the water, having good swim strength, and being able to move it.
Stop looking at the water as, I wonder how gently and carefully I can move through this body of water in my own lane for 45 minutes in a protected pool. That's not going to get you anywhere when you get dumped in the open water. Like you see people in the Chesapeake, I think for Eagleman coming up, or any of like Ironman Wisconsin, like Placid, Coeur d'Alene, like these potentially like rough bodies of water. You think that's going to get you anywhere, but going backwards, you might take like one stroke forward and two strokes back and wonder why your open water times are so much slower than your pool times, right? Like, and also, if you're wondering why your open water times are so much shorter than your pool times, A, you're probably not strong enough. B, you probably push off the walls like a freaking rocket ship in the pool, and you wonder why you get open water and you're not swimming 120s. It's because you push off the walls so hard, you're gaining a couple seconds right there. It's about strength, and it's about being strong. It's about swimming high in the water. It's not about being careful and soft and moving through the water and being, just soft. Like I see a lot of athletes that are so obsessed with swimming soft. Be strong. Be offensive when you get out and swim. Like, don't be. What did I tell lady last week? Don't be so delicate. Like, get to work, right? And stop again, because just that mentality alone when you swim, it makes you move through the water really slow because you're being so careful. Because, well, it's not just careful, it's also paralysis by analysis. It's all right, I need to enter the water here, then I need to try and glide for a minute, then I need to push my arm and push down here. That's fine. Then you push water back. 19 seconds later, you're still going through your stroke and you wonder why you haven't gone anywhere and why your stroke rate is so, or when you swim against a current, you can't go any faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you watch these high-end, even pool swimmers like in those 1500s, the Ledecky, all that, they're swimming with purpose, man. That's that's definitely not like worrying about form, and they're using the water to go forward. And I think, there's just this perception a lot of times, like you watch somebody at the Y and they're like, man, they are so smooth and fast. But the reality is you gotta, man, it's like, and the other thing is about why your open water times are so slow is because you're used to looking at that line and correcting and going straight by just looking down. But you're probably, you talk about the hips moving back and forth and going east and west the whole time. Who knows how much longer you swam in that Ironman, maybe 500 meters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you swam 500 meters more than you had to just because you're going kind of angling back and forth the whole time and not staying wide. I mean, that's the thing about, and we've talked about it, obviously everyone wants to talk about sighting, but the reality is if you have your stroke and you're out wide and it's, it's synchronized and it's like balanced, you're going to go straighter.
Exactly.
Just naturally. And we talk about, like, you sometimes just look out at something you're going to sight and don't even look at it. Just try to swim straight and concentrate on going towards it. And a lot of times you just go towards it. If your stroke is not going to be super unbalanced and pulling one way or the other.
And going across your body in midline every 2 seconds and your kick's going like every which way. You're like, how hard it is to swim straight, how much more effort it takes. Relax.
Mm-hmm. Relax.
All about the hips. Happy Gilmore. It's all about the hips.
Yeah, the hips, man.
And that was all in the podcast. That was it. I had zero intention of talking about swimming. I was actually going to talk about heat and humidity and its impacts on training. Had a great little whiteboard up here with some graphs and some data. But, hey, when Mike opens the door to talk about swimming, I take it. Coming in full blast, like with one of those big like SWAT, things they beat down doors with. I'm in.
Yeah, I don't think you can talk about it enough.
You can't.
There's one or two things in here that kind of get you pumped to get in the pool and swim more. That's the win.
Come see us. I'm not with we've had so much of a high demand for in-person swim analysis right now. I'm not doing online swim analysis right now, but just come in, book a session. I swear it's worth it. You can look on our Instagram to see the reviews and the improvement people have seen. Again, you can email from info on that to c26operations@gmail.com. But let's come in. Let us help you get better at swimming, because I promise you.
Yeah, next thing you know, you'll be looking up 4 years from now going, damn, I still don't get it.
Which is what most.
Let's save a few years here.
That's it. We're in the business of saving years. That's all we got. We love you. We appreciate you. Again, if you want any more info on all things we do, follow us on Instagram, C26_triathlon, or hop over to our website, c26triathlon.com.
That's it?
That's it, man. That's all I got.
All right, that's all I got too, man. I appreciate it.
I'm hungry just talking about something.
Oh, yeah. Let's give you some.